Hey everybody, JP Hunt with InkSoft here, and welcome to another episode of the Sell More Merch podcast. And today's guest is actually a returning guest. Monty Mims from SanMar joins us, and we're going to dig into contract decoration. So Monty, thanks for taking time to join me. I really appreciate it. And before we get underway, I'm going to put you on the spot and have you kind of inform our listeners, kind of give us a sense of your background. You have a great pedigree and lineage in the industry, and then maybe tell us a little bit about your role with SanMar, if you will.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction. And thanks to the InkSoft team for having me. I think these podcasts and community engagement things that companies like y'all are doing are key, especially in the current conditions we're finding ourselves in. Information is power, and this kind of stuff helps with that for sure. Just quick background. I was, raised as a kind of a second generation guy in this industry with my dad's first transfer business back in the 70s, and then business to business, primarily embroidery in the 80s. Worked actively with him for, 6 or 7 years. It was a relatively small shop at the time, but focusing more on sales and marketing with that business, and then hired by SanMar in '07 as a territory manager through 2016, and then changed over to a developing group here, which at the time was called Decorator Relations. And that group was coming into focus, organizing and strengthening the foundation prior laid to get our group of contract decorators really dialed in and taken to a new height. So worked on that for the last 3 or so years. And the team and myself have built an infrastructure and a database and a greater process of connecting those dots. And then starting off for 2020, another evolution to the group where we added in internet retail accounts, and now known as the Decorator and Digital Solutions team. So exciting to be part of this growth and an addition of internet retail and kind of tandem collaboration with the work we're doing with contract decorators and industry affiliates selling equipment and services.
Awesome. Well, you guys have an awesome reputation in the industry, which is, again, another reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast. So let's jump right into my first question. As I entered the industry, it took me a while to kind of wrap my brain around two sort of concepts in the industry, and that was the promotional products sort of value chain and the way the promotional product industry operates. And the second one was contract decoration. And of course, when learning about those two, exposed a whole slew of additional business opportunities. So let's assume for a moment a listener tuning in has never heard of contract decoration, or maybe there's some vagaries. So Monty, kind of level set here and give us a sense of what is contract decoration fundamentally, and then kind of break down sort of the mechanics of contract decoration. That way, as we dig into my following questions, we'll have the stage set.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it is easy for all of us to presume everybody knows this terminology. I know in the modern era, I would say that concept to someone, and they would say, "So we have to sign a contract to work with these guys." So I can't speak to the exact origin to the name specifics, but I can tell you, even again from my father's business, who was just embroidery, when he moved into his first commercial location, he was next to a company that offered contract screen printing. And, we kind of define that as someone who is decorating for fellow members of the wholesale industry trade. They have different rates set. So there are quite a few contract decorators that do both industry decoration and then also, direct end user sales and decoration. So they'll have two different price lists, one with that kind of retail price setting, and then the other for that wholesale or contract price setting. But they are typically just doing the production aspect of the exchange, right? So they're relying on their customers, what we refer to as shared accounts, to buy the blank goods from true wholesalers and ship them in, drop ship them into them to do the workflow process and decoration aspects. And then sometimes if it's a localized contract decorator, the broker or shared account will pick up the goods, and more often than not, for speed to market, they're having the contract decorator handle outbound shipping direct to the end user.
Got it. That's perfect. Well, I appreciate that. All right, Monty. So let's get into the sort of the business value, the business opportunity of contract decoration. I think this is the most important thing that we can inform folks of, right? And in particular, one of our thesis is, in the new sort of post-COVID economy, contract decoration is really going to grow and accelerate because of all the benefits. So let's kind of break those down. So in your view, Monty, what are the main, business benefits of developing a contract decoration approach, especially one that's strong? It really considers maybe contract decoration as not an afterthought, but a forethought in sort of planning your approach and serving customers. So what is the business value and opportunity of contract decoration?
When I think about this, I look at it from two perspectives. One, again, the broker or shared account without any equipment in-house, and then decorators. A lot of people misjudge the users of contract decorators as primarily brokers. And we have found that to not be the case. It is a high percentage, but there's just as many fellow decorators and team dealers and cop shops and others that utilize contract decorators as part of their network. And when someone asks us about that value proposition, what I tend to gravitate towards is, if you're utilizing a contract decorator, you have the ability to focus your time, energy, and resources in towards the sales and marketing and allow the contract decorators to be your backhouse production. If you're a decorator that, say, does just embroidery and you work with contract decorators that do services beyond that, screen printing, DTG, heat seal, you've now immediately expanded your menu of offerings for those services. So you can represent yourself as a much more comprehensive solution provider utilizing contract decorators as that service. The other thing I think that it helps with, and we're seeing this as many businesses don't just sell local, and so it can also expand your reach. There are some large organizations that have really built up a network of contract decorators and even to a regional standing. So they've got somebody for the Southeast, Northeast, Midwest, and this allows to sell to larger national scale accounts where you might be based in Florida, but servicing someone or an office in California or other parts of the country. And so, yes, you can receive the goods to your location, decorate, but then cover that high shipping cost. And so, again, when people come to us with those logistics challenges, we point back and say, we know of 63 contract decorators in the state of California, for instance. Why don't we work on getting you connected to find a list of those and see who might be able to receive the goods, do the decoration, and make a much faster transit time. So
Nice.
those would be two of the biggest ones. I think some of the others, a lot of times you have larger scale contract decorators that have reduced, negotiated better freight rates. So they'll often include that in as a service benefit. Again, access to other categories, even non-apparel, signage, and so forth. And then the thing that I think is relating to the current market conditions is everybody's concerned with overhead and labor right now. Labor was already a challenge in that, the market conditions were so ripe that it was very hard to find folks that wanted to work and reasonable rates and keeping up with the cost there. And so, even again, fellow decorators were going, hey, listen, do I want to buy another automatic press or buy a DTG machine and then have to find that hire and train them and take on added labor, overhead costs, and those headaches that can be associated with that? Or do I want to find somebody who offers, higher volume capacity for screen printing or DTG services or those other things? And we've been experiencing that growth in people utilizing our network and information.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing those insights. I want to comment on one of the points you made. In fact, this is something I heard from one of my business mentors ages ago. But as an entrepreneur, it's always finding time or opportunities to reinvest your time into things that will have a sort of a better return, right? So I think what we're seeing now in this state of a global pandemic is we've seen a lot of traditional print shops or decorators who didn't have a strong sales and marketing, engine or operation. They're sort of scrambling, right? They were so focused on manufacturing and all of those easy jobs sort of dried up. And so they were left in this position. Well, now what do we do, right? So with that said, if again, to your point, you can delegate some of the manufacturing side of the business, and you can really turn your attention to developing your sales and marketing capabilities and reach. I mean, that's what keeps the sales funnel full, ensures that you're constantly, acquiring new customers and servicing those existing ones. So I'm glad you made that point. One other thing I'm going to ask you to comment on, but let's talk about risk, sort of mitigation for a moment's time. If I'm going to decorate a technical product or an expensive wholesale product, again, let's talk about sort of how your perspective on entrusting maybe a seasoned expert to handle that decoration and manufacturing compared to taking it on and experimenting myself. Do you have any insights there?
Yeah, and it kind of correlates to a thought I was going to bring up anyway, which is at the ASI Orlando shows or even PPAI Vegas, those shows coming out in January, we see a increase of new people in the industry, and of course more on the promotional product side. They've retired or they've had a career change and are starting this aspect. And again, because of the environment, it's mostly brokers. And so we'll have those conversations in the booth about, I need to find somebody who could decorate this. They'll ask us, do you all decorate? No, we don't, but we have a network of contract decorators that can help with that. And one of the things we try to coach towards is that you need to find not a contract decorator. You need to find a network of contract decorators, because there will be the company that's fast, the company that's affordable, and the company that's focused on quality, right? So to your point, having a variety of contract decorators that you get to know and develop business relationships with will help you discover who fits those categories. And, again, because you're relying on that third party element, what happens when your guy is flooded with other work and now, they've got a backlog of 2 or 3 weeks. It's a much safer play and mitigated risk to already have some other plan B, C, and D options, right?
Right.
And, to your point, looking forward as a positive, yes, there are contract decorators in this industry and trade that have been doing this for, 20, 30 years long and have excellent, talented artists and very knowledgeable, creative, skill mindset people there. And if that's not your forte and strength, then there's another value added benefit to that, right? The key to all of that is having a truly open and two-way relationship. There are a lot of contract decorators that frankly get abused and don't have a valued relationship with the shared accounts that they service. And the onus is on both parties, but often the shared accounts will just throw the work at them and put in the pricing and do the payment. And it's not truly a collaborative experience. When we see the best relationships are when they work together in tandem. We're the back end production of this company, and you're the front end sales and marketing machine. And let's operate under that guise that we're all working together on this, right? Not, I'm just here to do the labor and you do the sales. So be collaborative, learn from them and their experience, provide the detailed knowledge that they need to produce effectively. And that symbiotic relationship can be extremely powerful.
I'm glad you suggest that. It seems like a best practice of contract decoration is, I should be able to rely on my partner to inform me of decoration technique or the nuance, the things that are going to make an impact on my customer relationship. Yeah, so it seems like getting away from making it a transactional, process and making it more of a strategic business, relationship is certainly critical. And to that point, let me ask you a question about sampling. If I'm out engaging with a customer and maybe there's a curveball, tell me about, as part of that relationship, how may sampling work, or again, consulting to know whether I should be able to commit this in the sales process or cycle. Can you kind of break down how those might work as part of the relationship?
Yeah, I think sampling is an important value tool that contract decorators should have in their toolkit. Certain decoration techniques lend themselves, more towards smaller runs and the ability to produce samples. Certainly harder to do with screen printing than it is certainly with embroidery or even heat seal. But I think the spec sample concept is a powerful tool. We've heard of many great success stories that were built upon not just bringing in blank apparel and logos, but putting those two things together in a delivered experience. Your largest end users, your most buttoned up and polished, frankly, expect that level of service.
Right.
So if you're not collaborating with your contract decorator to say, hey, listen, I know there's cost, there's time involved on this. Let's find a balance to make that work. But I know that if I can bring in these shirts and these hats with these logos already on them and the colors coordinating and really paint that picture in a more, vivid and real sense, I'm going to win this business. And that's going to be good for me, good for you. Again, back to that collaborative approach.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, don't forget to give your contract decorators gifts and take good care of them, right? If you're ever in a pinch, you need to be able to expect to get call in favors or get bailed out, or, I would think, selfishly, again, as a business operator, if you could call upon those folks and they'd be glad to service you in unique ways. I mean, that's such an advantage, right? Compared to if you abuse the relationship or treat it so transactional, well, you get the same sort of response, in a critical time. So it's just funny how we have to remind people to be a good citizen, right?
Yeah, I mean, you always hear about squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Well, how about the
Exactly.
kind wheel? How about the nice wheel? And I would
That's a good point.
argue, one of the struggles contract decorators feel is the lack of complete and accurate information to process a job effectively. So
Totally.
what I coach and counsel with them is to, look at their brokers not in how much volume or dollars they're doing, but what's their level of organizational discipline and
Right.
how clean and ready are their orders and that data that's critical to process effectively. How buttoned up is that? And those are the ones that are really your most valuable brokers or shared accounts.
Definitely. And that calls out a good practice. I mean, I've heard anecdotally, these order complete, packages, it benefits everybody, right? If your customer expects goods in hands on a certain date and you're providing only a small share of the information the contract decorator needs to perform the job, well, it's going to sit idle. So it seemed like this idleness, right? It all comes down to incomplete, inaccurate information and sort of that communication gap. So I've heard from both parties, right? How can we provide high quality information that's accurate so we can all do our jobs properly to hit the common goal, which is servicing the end customer, the receiver.
Yeah, it's again a two-way street. Some contract decorators with great practices out there will make arrangements with some of their accounts to offer, in-shop half day or full day training.
Oh,
Again, they
wow.
see the value of if I can have that broker who's fairly new to the industry. I'm hoping that the brokerage company is working with them on the fundamentals of sales and apparel and all the other things they have to work. But let me bring them in for a half day or full day to get them a kind of decoration one-on-one training because I'm willing to make that front end investment in their time and knowledge to save my entire organization the time and frustration of having to do that on the fly and constantly going, no, for embroidery, we need a DST file and you sent me an EPS file. You said same art as before, but this is that. You have to charge for an underbase. These are all those pain point headaches that decorators can either be mired in and day out, or come up with a strategic plan to help educate them on the front end to certainly minimize all those ongoing lingering headaches down the road.
Well, it's brilliant. Usually in a podcast, there's one aha moment or brilliant moment, and I'm going to flag that as that one. I've never contemplated that or heard of that.
It's
That makes all
it's
the sense in the world.
it's
So
unfortunately more rare than it should be, and I think it's a luxury that when we're not crazy busy, it's certainly easier to build that and create that. That's one of the advantages I think I see in the current market conditions. The industry was running so hot, so just at a
yeah,
boiling point up until this sudden dead stop. I hope business owners are seeing this as a nice reboot and refocusing their energy and efforts on those core fundamentals or the things they've always had in the back of their mind as, gosh, I really need to do this, but just can't seem to find the time. Well, in most cases, we have the time now. So
exactly.
there will be a rise of adaptation and evolution that can come out of this slowdown. And those that are capitalizing on that are going to be a lot further along. So now's the time to build that infrastructure, come up with that model and that plan. So as things ramp back up, you can seamlessly integrate it and be better for it.
Yeah, that's a really great point. In fact, I think the paradigm shift could be, this investment in education and building the partnership. We're going to reduce misprints, which is a win for all of us. It's a way for us to reduce costs and overhead, and of course, not jeopardize a customer relationship, right? So I think oftentimes people see, hey, I got to invest in education. There's my time, and they see that as a hard cost, and they don't see the upside. But it also seems like that could be the glue to start to build a real meaningful relationship, right? If I'm the contract decorator that overinvests in really educating and consulting my customers, I'm going to build those, long-term healthy relationships. I get to pick and choose over time, right? That's a really interesting point. Well, Monty, you're sort of, you have a very good presence on social. You're oftentimes showing really cool decoration technique and new technologies, and so at the end of the podcast, you got to remind me to give a shout out to all of your social spaces. But I've seen you doing a lot of engagement, and it seems like you have a good sense of how entrepreneurs in our space are thinking about the current situation we find ourselves in dealing with COVID, but also thinking about strategizing, like, well, what does the recovery look like, and what are my efforts going to be strategically to get my business back into a state where we're performing. So from your perspective, and speaking with decorators across the spectrum, what are the common themes and things that these entrepreneurs are thinking about as part of that recovery process?
Yeah, it's something I've been trying to stay tuned in with. We certainly have our own work and efforts here at SanMar to get our boots strapped back on and climbing
Right.
up the mountain. But I do try to find the time to stay connected to the community and be active in some of the social groups to see what those folks are talking about. I think there's great insights and resources. I've talked to a number of my decorators from when I was a territory manager in Jacksonville that have been doing this for 20, 25 years long now. And when I ask them about, are you members of any of the industry Facebook groups? Are you aware of the Here for Good campaign? They don't have a clue, right? And so, that's exciting for me, that there is still a lot of information readily accessible to owners right now. It's just in the past, they haven't thought to look for that. They haven't needed to look for that. And so to
Right.
be able to help those owners who are starving right now and say, here, go look here, here's a starting point, check this out, and get those light bulbs going off. Again, back to the earlier comment, we haven't had the time and thought to do stuff like that. And now's the value of these social connections. So I guess I would, start my answer by saying that the Here for Good campaign has been one of the things that I've been simply blown away by, to see the community come together, and what I believe was started by, one or two decorators across the country, quickly flourished, went viral, if you will. And it was grounded in a great spirit of fundraising and helping local small businesses. And I don't think that as a short term, here and now, and when we get back to business, that's just going to evaporate and go away. I think that's a perfect example of a kind of springboard towards what modern, industry business looks like. The idea of, partnering with a company and saying, hey, listen, we're going to have little to no upfront cost here. Get us your artwork. We've got the platform. We have the sales and fulfillment resources. I just want you and your notoriety and popularity to market this, share this with all your fans and followers, point them back to our website to sell goods, and we'll split the profits.
Totally.
So I see that now as a kind of crisis solution, but it's not a brand new business model. It's a business model that many of the leading internet retail and tech-based companies in our industry have been putting on for years. It's just springboarded now with all of this, and I hope decorators and businesses alike, because you don't have to be a decorator to pull that off. There's just as much adaptation happening at the contract decorator level that say, we have the site resources. We certainly have the production and fulfillment. You're a broker. You want to do this campaign or something like it. Again, you work out the relationships. You get them to sell and share, and we'll handle the back end. So
Right.
that's one of the things that I think coming out of this, we're going to only see that grow and grow.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And to that point too, it isn't, fundraising is not a new, strategy or model altogether. I think the thing to earmark here is, you look at the business cycle and the economic recovery that will need to take place. We're talking about, 48-month or longer period. And every organization, group, club will be starved for funds because they've been off their traditional fundraising cadence and cycle. Galas have been canceled, events, auctions. So we think that decorators need to be hyper mindful of fundraising as a service and bring that to their market in a strong way, because it's going to have some real legs, and I think help support again this recovery effort within our industry.
I think another result of this will be decorators hesitant to scale back up again with both labor and overhead, and so our team has been talking about the kind of preparations for even higher increased inquiries of
Yep.
people looking to find and utilize contract decorators. And again, it may just be a temporary gradual step as to, hey, listen, I don't want to, I had a shop of 20 people. I'm reduced to 3 now. We're lean skeleton crew. I've got my automatic or second automatic sitting idle. And I don't know if I'm ready to go from 3 back to 20, right?
Exactly.
I need to make that graduate adjustment, but it's chicken or the egg. And so
Yeah.
if I can sell and temporarily or maybe permanently process through a contract decorator who is available and build up kind of a network, I may want to look at that. And one other point that just came to my mind on that note is, and this is speaking to decorators using contract decorators, is the contract decorator sees the value because they're going to be working with a company who does know what an EPS file is, and maybe bringing in print ready artwork on a more reliable, consistent basis. But this community of decorators working with decorators also pans out when there's a micro crisis, meaning that decorator's automatics down for that day, right?
Right.
So they can utilize each other in that just knowledge and sharing, as well as saying, hey, listen, I'm down. I've got a repair guy. He's going to be coming in, but it's going to take a few days. Can you run these jobs for me? We're seeing that with contract decorators, traditional competitive rivals working in support of each other. When this started to go down, we have an extensive database. We've built this infrastructure, and now all of a sudden, when this happened, the COVID crisis, we realized we're going to have contract decorators temporarily shutting their business down, and still getting an influx of people trying to find them. And how do we manage that, right? And we had quite a few contract decorators go, hey, I know some of my local competitive peers will be down. Please get the word out. We'll run the jobs, and on our solemn honor, not look at this as a way to capture business, but simply in
Right.
support and help of our fellow contract decorators. So again, another silver lining and shining beam of positivity that's come through these cloudy times.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. Well, I think this is a good segue to kind of play crystal ball, and I'm going to put you on the spot and see if you have any provision to offer up in terms of, we're going through this major financial transformation, and there's going to be greater demands for contract decoration for some of the points you made, right? Maybe I'll never recover some of my staff or my print capacity, or hey, I don't want to grow on the manufacturing side. I don't want more space, more overhead in that regards. I want to focus on sales and marketing. So with that said, let's look to the future. And I think we both agree, and most people would reasonably agree, that there's going to be big demand on contract decoration in the future. And it's going to drive a lot of the value train. But what other things do you see happening to contract decoration in the future?
Yeah, and this is certainly relevant to contract decorators, but I think decorators are businesses in general. Again, the knowledge and awareness, which might be coming out of, oh gosh, I didn't even know that there were this many contract decorators out there. This is how it works. I can expand my menu offering of techniques. And so as this changes, there'll be businesses that experience that for the first time. And all of a sudden, again, more light bulb moments. Oh gosh, I didn't realize I could sell DTG. I've been so paralyzed in buying a DTG machine. And now I've located three nearby contract decorators that do that all day, every day. They've
Right.
dialed in the process. They've worked out the bugs, the kinks, the headaches. And I'm going to add on my website and my kind of menu of offering that we're offering DTG services. So I think there'll be that growth and expansion of techniques, as well as the other shift towards potential smaller run orders. You know, people
Mm.
are a little reticent to hold inventory and do fulfillment programs. Again, we were already seeing that market shift of on demand or just in time. So I think you'll see that grow as well. This is involving investments into more single head embroidery machines, which traditionally we're like, well, maybe I have my one for samples. Well, now we're seeing decorators that have really shifted in that direction. Now they've got a bank of 4, 6 single heads running online store programs and program business in those smaller runs, and they've worked out the process to make it cost effective and evolving in that direction. Same thing with groups of DTG heat press machines. So that shift and that growth had already been occurring. I think it's just going to go further. And then the other point we hadn't discussed already was, again, the utilization of smart technology. And whether that's, I've known that I've needed a website, because as silly as it might sound to your listeners, there's still plenty of solid, strong businesses out there without a website or without a modern website that's responsive and scalable. To the next iteration, which is, gosh, I've learned about this Here for Good campaign. Man, let's get this going. I'm missing the web store component, right?
Right.
So, that's not a quick, switch you can just flip on. There's some learning and things you have to figure out on that side. So I think more companies are going to be looking at web store solutions and how can I continue to virtually sell to my customers. And as maybe that walk-in foot traffic is slowly creeping in, I still want to be able to service these customers on an ongoing basis. I need to finally make that investment into web store solutions. On that topic, if I can sidebar, I was doing that with my father's business, gosh, 15 years ago and finding great success. So flash forward 2020 and certainly these conditions, this is not new. This is not maybe this kind of works. Perhaps this is something my customers want. It's in the highest demand now than it's ever been. When I was researching it back then, someone told me if you can find a way to sell while you're sleeping, then you've got something, right?
Right.
And you can't do that when the shop's closed, but you can do that when the stores are up 24 hours, 365, and your customers are going there and making purchases at all hours. And even in my, kind of minuscule way, it was an exciting time in the morning when we fire up the computer, open up the email box, and there was 15 orders waiting for us to
Exactly.
sift through and process. So I think both on the front end store side, but even on the back end, information is power. And if you don't know what your customers are, what businesses, what industries they are doing, you're again shortchanging the value that you have. So one of the other aspects to this COVID crisis is what industries are still buying. You hear some reports out there of industries booming right now and companies hiring. Do you have a good diverse spectrum of end users or companies and industries that you're servicing, or did you have all your eggs in the hospitality basket and
Right.
now you're struggling, right? So capturing those businesses, organizing and cataloging them by industry type, and then looking at as a clear snapshot, a good CRM and a good back end solution can help you do that.
Yeah, those are all excellent points. Well, Monty, I'll ask for you maybe your top three, and I wouldn't limit it, but give us a sense of if I'm concerned with profitability at the order level when engaging in contract decoration, and this could be for both parties, right? What are the things to be mindful of, some of the best practices to maximize profit opportunity when engaging in contract decoration?
It's the contract decoration world is a time and efficiency play.
Right.
So as to our earlier topic and conversation about the accuracy of your information. Put good in, get good out. And that's been a struggle for both parties. There have been contract decorators that have created online forums and have been really strict about saying, you know, this is a form, it needs to be completed. There's tons of red asterisks. I need the artwork attached. I need an in-hand date confirmed. Frankly, that order is not live in my shop unless you put through this system. I know you have your own PO and I know you want to do it this way or that way. I've got to wrangle the cats, get them in a single file line and have everybody, ready to go. So, from the broker side, learn those nuances, learn those details and be buttoned up. And from the contract decorator side, again, understand the value of your time, understand the shared accounts that you're working with, and who is the easiest, who is the most efficient, who's the most organized, and even consider placing some stock in that and saying, hey, listen, we're gonna work on a concession with spec sampling just for you. We're gonna come up with a sort of a VIP pricing program because you're dialed in, you're market ready. My service team rarely has snag delays and issues with you, and that's extremely important to us in our process, right? So I think that's going to be a key aspect. And again, technology can be the bridge between those two. So utilizing technology and having proofing and having order status flow through your technology provider to really minimize a lot of the back and forth and drag and delays is extremely vital in this communal relationship. So if you don't have that now, again, now's the time to dive in, explore that, invest in those systems, and get those relationships strengthened.
Nice. I had just a comment in terms of best practice. I heard one contract decorator, trying to create an incentive to get order complete data submitted, right? And they would leverage the assurance of a production date. And so again, when we look at a partnership, we look at these goals in common. It's about getting goods in hand to the customer on the time frame that they expect, right? And so sort of, again, keeping in mind the goal and driving that goal and reinforcing it with, hey, we really need you to do your part and supply the proper information that's accurate so we can then do our part. And we're going to be able to assure you of a date once we have that information. So
yeah, that's an incentive. Any incentive, and it could be carrot, it could be stick, it could be both.
exactly.
But I've talked to some frustrated contract decorators that said we tried that, nobody adopted it, didn't work. And again, my pushback to them is, did you deploy effective carrots? Did you maybe consider a stick approach here? But
Exactly.
Once you prove the value of that, and you either have an incentive or again, just have a conversation with the shared accounts and brokers to say, hey, this is why it's important to us. And again, that goes back to hey, come live our world for a half a day or a day. Come see where our team, not just how to screen print, not just how to, but come see the true behind the curtain day in the life, that workflow. And I'm going to bring you over to meet Kathy and hear her angst about how much time she spends on the phone and in the email clog dealing with all the back and forth. And that's where that time gets sucked out our windows.
That's awesome. Well, Monty, I want to put a spotlight to kind of conclude the podcast here on the things that you and your team are doing at SanMar to, again, provide resources. And I think it's really enablement, right? It's taking two SanMar customers and unifying them to create value. So do me a favor, talk about some of the tools that and resources that you folks have at SanMar to help, again, these two parties come together and help create value for everybody that's involved.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I would be remiss if I didn't kind of share the origin story here. We have a great person at SanMar named Mark Bailey, who's been with us for many, many years, one of the OGs, we like to say. And he was tasked back in 08, 09 to start to research and develop this foundation that we now sit upon. And the backstory was, we were seeing companies that sold apparel also offer decoration services. That certainly provides a streamline and value there. And thankfully, our ownership and leadership has maintained steadfast, firm resolve to not get into decorating. We see that as risky business. We see that as too much interference with the customers that we service. Most underestimate the value and the amount that contract decorators purchase themselves. I would argue a typical contract decorator that we work with is really more of a 60-40 hybrid. So it could be 60, 70% contract decorating, but still a strong 30, 40% direct sales. And I would even take it a step further to say those that have more of a mixed market tend to be, stronger with their knowledge of what the end users want. And frankly, being able to keep that profitable business, help their, with employees, retention and growth and development of equipment, right? So our leadership began to develop a network. It took quite a while to kind of get all this figured out, but we quickly learned what those needs and wants are that contract decorators would appreciate. We developed our PSST program. We developed our general network, and that's where we find ourselves now is a network of 700 contract decorators that we have, met with, visited their shop. We have a vetting process because there are a lot of companies out there that do contract as a part-time or just when things are slow, or they've organically picked up a handful of brokers that they work with. And we want decorators that are in our network who have primary focus on contract decoration with, a true growth strategy there. And even as recent as this year, increasing kind of those, aspects of requirements. And one of the challenges we found in the last few years was we were also getting the word out about this, and we were getting an increase of people coming to us asking to find contract decorators.
Right.
What we had not done was found a solution of saying we have a large network, we know a lot about them, we were building profiles on all these decorators. And so we would get people come to us and say, hey, can I get a list, or can you share with me your contract decorators for the state of Florida? And we would say, okay, reluctantly, here's a list of 40 companies, right? But it doesn't help them because those companies all do different things and are different locations and different services. So what we've really worked on the last few years is taking the profile data that we knew about these decorators and flipping that as a front customer-facing form. So on our landing page on the website, there's two key things relevant to this topic. One is the contract decorator finder form. And so that's a form that anyone can fill out. They can designate by state, city, regional locations, and then also drill down into the major decoration techniques, which get even more granular. So you could query looking for a contract screen printer who does water base and discharge in this area, but also other fulfillment services. So maybe you need them to do polybagging and retail hang tagging work. We've got a lot of data. We're still building it. It's not fully complete. And of course, the only thing constant is change, right? So
Right.
part of our ongoing, annual site visits, which myself and the other members of the team do, is keeping up. Hey, has anything changed in your profile? Did you add equipment, drop equipment, add a new service? Are you now using shop management software or not? So it's an ongoing process, but that network and that infrastructure we built, again, has played off big time right now as the incoming volume has shrunk of inquiries, but the critical need of going, I'm trying to find somebody who's open in my area, right? And that was one of the early pivots that we did, was reaching out to our decorators, asking them, are you open? Many of the best would reach out to us and notify, hey, we're going to voluntarily, take off the next week or 2 weeks, kind of hunker down, shelter in place. The shop will be closed. We're notifying our customers. And we've done our best to kind of manage that from the database side of saying who's open, who's not. If you go to SanMar's website, you'll see that when you go to order product, please check with your decorator to make sure they're open and receiving goods. And again, if we didn't have all this infrastructure, that would be certainly a harder process.
Totally. And I want to underscore that we'll link in our show notes and the blog posting that corresponds with this podcast links to all these SanMar resources and tools that you're mentioning, Monty. So certainly encourage people to check those out and check out what you folks are up to.
Yeah, I would say to that, and thank you first, JP. Couple areas folks can explore if they're on SanMar.com. We have a top blue bar of kind of our main menu options, and our team is located under the resources section and subcategory services, and then of course the team is called Decorator Digital Solutions. So you can kind of read about what we do and what we offer there. One other component we hadn't discussed is we work with affiliates, including software companies like InkSoft. And again, in the spirit of connectivity and collaboration of understanding, how your services can help our customers, how our customers are in need of services you provide. But you can find the Decorator Finder link on there. And then if you're a contract decorator, and there's still quite a few out there we haven't found and don't know about what we've built and organized, there's also an application form. So you can share with us about your business and your details, and then we will review and contact you to follow up about our guidelines and requirements.
Nice. And since we're talking about links and resources and information, I mentioned at the end of the podcast, I'd have you call out some of the places you can be found, socializing and engaging and sharing. So I follow you on Twitter at Apparel Geek, but let's talk about maybe where listeners should consider adding you and following you to kind of dig into your vision.
Sure. Before that, I wanted to also make mention to probably the best way of reaching us and getting access to this, so you're not maybe fumbling around on the website, is emailing our team. And thankfully you have that one unifying email address, which is decoratorrelations@sanmar.com. So if you email into that team, they can provide resources back about decoration advice, how and where should I decorate on this bag that my customer is sending me, decoration challenges. So that's been something else we've really evolved in the last year or so for anybody, not just contract decorators, but somebody's having an issue, we can help try to solve that through a kind of a more methodical process. And then, of course, links to either apply to as a contract decorator or find one. So decoratorrelations@sanmar.com is a great place to get the links connected and have that starting conversation.
Awesome.
As you mentioned, Apparel Geek. Yeah, I'm Apparel Geek on most things, and you can find my social links on apparelgeek.com. It's nothing crazy. The last few years, I've been so busy with all the stuff we've been doing at SanMar. Apparel Geek's not quite what it used to be, but that's just simply something that I have built to be able to share back a lot of the interesting things I find and discover back with the customers that have interest in seeing. Not everybody gets to go to ISS Long Beach or the different shows out there, or certainly not into different shops and seeing cool creative things that the community is doing. So I, of course, always ask for permission to share, but I do believe in that value and others as well. So I wanted to create a way that people could access it and stay connected.
That's awesome. Well, Monty, again, I want to thank you and the SanMar team for all that you do for the industry. Again, all the resources and education, and you guys are doing a great service to our industry. And we'll let this podcast serve for as we come back maybe a couple years later and say, hey, Monty and I, we told you that contract decoration would grow and evolve rapidly, and maybe this will be a way for us to come back and tell everybody we told you we were right. Which is
I don't know if that was exactly our focus or purpose here, but I think, now is the time that people should, pull themselves out of their funk cloud and listen. Yep. I'm just as guilty of being in that. I think everybody's going through an emotional roller coaster right now, totally. But got to lift your head up. Got to utilize these resources that you've always known are out there. Just have always, kind of leaned on the I don't have time excuse. Exactly. Now we have the time. Time is extremely valuable, and we're rich with it. So let's cash in those time chips, learn about these things that will enhance your business and keep it future-proof and leaning forward as the market recovers and we're all growing together.
Well, awesome. Well, Monty, thank you again. I'm hopeful this won't be the last podcast that we engage in together. Now you're a return visitor. So my hope is that we can keep the conversation going and maybe just continue the story, right? To show how contract decoration is evolving and share new tips and insights. So again, thanks for taking the time to join us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you as well, JP.